Hello and welcome to today's European SharePoint, Office 365 and Azure Community webinar. My name is Ella and I'm delighted to be joined by Microsoft RD and MVP Gökhan, who will be talking to you about Microsoft Teams and SharePoint, leading the power of digital transformation. Remember to join the conversation about today's webinar on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @EuropeanSP and our hashtag is ESPC21. Don't forget to check out the Resource Centre. The Resource Centre is updated daily with the latest blogs, ebooks, webinars, and how-to videos. Check out all of the upcoming SharePoint Week webinars and join us later on for Power Platform's deep integration with SharePoint with Daniel Christian. And also a big thank you to our SharePoint Week sponsors, Nentex. After the webinar, we will have a question and answer session. Type any question you may have into the question window. Questions will be selected and answered at the end of the presentation. Webinars are recorded and all recordings will be sent to those registered when the webinar recording is available. Now, without further ado, I'm going to pass you over to our lovely webinar host today, Gökhan. Good morning, Gökhan. How are you today?
Good morning. I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing?
Great, thanks. All set for the webinar now. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, I'll then accept this screen share and just confirm that you can see the screen. Then I can definitely
see it. And you just put a full screen in.
Fantastic. Perfect. So welcome everyone. Good morning, bonjour, buongiorno, salam, bienvenido, merhaba in any language. I have seen people from the Philippines. Welcome from the Philippines. Welcome from Turkey. Welcome to Spain. Welcome to the United States. Welcome to this session about Microsoft Teams and SharePoint, where I'll be explaining you why and how SharePoint is so much important for the Microsoft Teams ecosystem. You'll be learning today everything from A to Z about SharePoint and how it integrates very well with Microsoft Teams. You will also see and learn the issues that we have today with SharePoint and Teams, because not everything is as perfect as you hoped and wished, but I will show you everything in detail. Every good stuff, every bad stuff, and for every bad stuff, I will also show you a workaround how you can actually avoid that kind of issues and actually have that digital transformation move from the legacy applications, move from the old classic environments to Office 365 to Microsoft 365. My name is Gökhan Ozipsi. Don't try to say Ozipsi, it's quite complicated. Even me, I needed like 4 years to say it. It's one of the most horrible family names that you can ever find. Gökhan is more than enough. I'm principal at Neoxy, which is actually my own company, and I'm working as a VP at Juno Intranet. I'm an active Microsoft MVP for 8-9 years, I think now, and a 5-year Microsoft Regional Director. My Twitter handle is xGökhan, so if you have any questions, you want to provide some feedback around this session, you want to know about this session, or I've been presenting at numerous conferences like SharePoint Fest, SharePoint Conference, at Collab Summit in Germany. I have a bunch of other session slides. You want to know, it's always a good place to check because I'm sharing all the knowledge on my Twitter handle. That being said, I only have 3 slides and I have a bunch of demos. So today, it's not about slides, it's all about real world examples, real world scenarios, but I still have to show you three or four slides to get an introduction about what Microsoft Teams is and how the architecture is composed of Teams. So Teams is a container that is consuming from all different services in Office 365. And this is the image that you should actually take in consideration and learn by heart, because it uses SharePoint for storing the files. It uses Power Automate, Power Apps, tasks for intelligent and automated business applications. You can have your conversations, audio calls, video calls with Teams through the Skype for Business Intelligence, or the former Skype for Business Intelligence, exchange conversations. You can even bring applications like from SharePoint Framework Solutions, the old classic WSPs we have been building now. We can do it with the cloud model, with SharePoint Framework. Well, you can even add your app as a tab into Microsoft Teams and consume that app. It is built on the M365 groups model, meaning that every security is basically managed through that group. which is also inheriting from the bots framework, and also lists. So as you can see, Teams is actually consuming from all those services. And that also means that if SharePoint has an issue, that Teams will have an issue. If your Power App has an issue, well, the apps that you have been building with Power Apps will have an issue in Teams, etc., etc. It is a correct statement to say that it's a one single capability, one experience, one hub for all of those services we have in the Office 365 ecosystem. This is the slide that you should print and look at it every single day. You have to learn about that slide. And what's that slide actually? Let me take my laser pointer and show that to you. So every single team that you will create will today create M365 group, meaning that everything that you will add to your team as a permission will be managed through that group. But that's not all. Whenever you create a trigger to create that group, it will create a SharePoint site, a shared OneNote, a shared mailbox, and the Skype for Business artifact, still Skype for Business artifacts for you, because as an example, if you want to manage your teams from a voice perspective with PowerShell, it still needs the Skype for Business module, right? So it still does something with Skype. We're still not getting rid completely from Skype for Business, but yet you get all of those apps for you especially, meaning that if you decide for fun to create 500 teams, well, it will provision for you 500 groups and 500 of each of those, right? And that's the reason why today we have a lot of organizations, a lot of vendors doing about provisioning and governance around the teams provisioning. Then you can extend your experience and add some tools from the M365 ecosystem, such as your apps, your dashboards, your planner, etc., as well as going outside of the Microsoft ecosystem and add some tools from Google, Adobe, and Gmail. And I will show that to you in a couple of seconds. And finally, if we'll leave the Office 365 stack and go to the Azure stack, well, you can even build your own applications from the services you have in Azure. One of them is the pipelines, which we use to build and monitor or Teams usage, or notification app for getting and receiving notifications, or even sending notifications to your mobile phone, etc., etc. All of that is how Microsoft Teams is composed. You have your team, which looks like easy, but behind the scene, well, you have a bunch of other services working for you. Remember I told you, and I said, like, whenever you have an issue with SharePoint, well, basically your teams will have an issue. That's because all of those apps that we create, well, they're all consuming artifacts from that service to do a specific job. Let me go directly to SharePoint. If you add a file to a team, well, that's going to be stored into a SharePoint site. However, if you have a one-to-one conversation in the chat module in Microsoft Teams, well, that file being shared will be stored into OneDrive. Today, or hopefully soon, what will happen is that the recordings from Microsoft Stream will also go to OneDrive. Now, what will happen if your OneDrive has an issue? Well, basically, the chat files and the video streaming recordings will also have a file. That's the reason why I said every artifact you have here is important for Microsoft's team. Microsoft Teams is consuming all of those services and all those artifacts. If I just go back, I just forgot one thing, is that little SharePoint icon. That little SharePoint icon is actually what we call today, and what we will see in a couple of minutes, the private channel. The private channels will provision for you a standalone SharePoint site where you can collaborate easily with members of that team and bring the SharePoint capabilities to that channel. However, those are separate SharePoint sites. And the reason why Microsoft didn't use the existing SharePoint site and created a standalone SharePoint site is, as the owner of the M365 group, you could see the content of the SharePoint site, which we want to avoid, right? As a private channel owner, we want to be sure that only the owner of the private channel can access the data. And that's the reason why it's a standard SharePoint site, and only the owner of that SharePoint site can see the content of the private channel. And that's the reason why it's not the existing SharePoint site. And that's then the last slide before we move on to the demo environment. I've had a lot of questions from multiple organizations saying, Gökhan, we were actually good without Microsoft Teams. Skype was doing very well. SharePoint was doing very well. Why did we actually needed such thing? And the response is simple. Today, when we do on digital transformation, meaning that we get rid of those legacy applications, old IT infrastructure to the modern era, well, you need a place, a secure, scalable, and flexible place to actually collaborate, bring your data, and consume from that data. And definitely today, when you look on premises, it's still extremely complicated. When you look to, as an example, how managing external users with Teams, how easy it is, and look on an on-premises environment, how complicated it is to manage your users. Think about certificates, phone-based authentication, VPNs, tokens, SMS, and multi-factor authentication. Oh my gosh, I'm getting headaches only by thinking about that. And we still today have organizations who resist on doing stuff like that. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying it's extremely complicated when you compare it with the modern era, how easily it's being done. And definitely you will never get the cloud offerings, cloud innovations, cloud transformations. Think about AI, Syntax, Microsoft Viva, the cloud flows or Delve, stuff that you, I think, will never get on premises. They're all for you in the Microsoft Teams era. That being said, now let's go directly into the demo environment and talk more about Microsoft Teams. This is the agenda for today. We will talk a lot about everything that's actually connected to SharePoint. We will see about the Teams creation, the channel creation, emojis, which is like a hype I've seen today, but I will show you a bunch of things about SharePoint and emojis, about private channels, about the tabs connectors, the cloud storage, about the bot. We will even create a bot, a Q&A bot, to replace legacy SharePoint lists, SharePoint FAQs, frequently asked questions. Hopefully, we will get time to dive into Microsoft Viva, go to lists, the Power App custom form, and the delayed delivery. As you can see, a bunch of stuff to discuss. So let's go straight forward and create a new team. We will start to create a new team, and I will create a public one, and I will name it European SharePoint O365 Azure Community Team, right? It's a long title, doesn't matter. We will just create a team. And you will see that in a few seconds, what happened is my team has been created. But in the backend, as I mentioned you, a new group will be created, and that group will trigger the creation of the SharePoint site, and so on and so on. And how you can know that is whenever you go under the file section, well, you will see that you can upload some files and add some new items. And if you hit open in SharePoint, well, you will see now that I have a SharePoint site, which is called the same as my team name, European SharePoint Office 365 Azure Community Team, and I can start adding documents into the SharePoint site. One of the biggest news as well is that you can see now from that icon that this is a team connected SharePoint site, meaning that I can actually now hit on that button and I will be redirected to that specific team. It's still new, so it's quite normal that you get that kind of issues. But within a couple of minutes, when the provisioning engine will be done, we will definitely be using that button. Okay, meaning if I just come here and say upload a file, very quickly, I'm uploading an image file into the SharePoint. If I come back to my SharePoint list and do a refresh, well, what you will see is that the file is uploaded here. Nothing rocket science, it just shows you that SharePoint is integrated into Microsoft Teams, and every file you will be adding into the Files tab will be stored in SharePoint, okay? Now, if I add a new channel, and I'm not gonna deep dive into what a channel is, but it's a container within your team that you can actually create, and let's call this marketing. I like to talk about marketing, and you can create a standard one or a private one. The standard one is the one that you will use and consume from the created SharePoint site, and the private one is you have to invite people and a new standalone site will be created for you. We will see both, so let's start with the standard one. I'm adding a standard channel, and what you now will see is that the files experience is empty, which is normal because If I open this again in SharePoint and go to the documents, what you will see, it creates a new folder for me within the shared document library, meaning, and it's a correct statement to say that every channel you create will create a new folder within the document section, right? Okay, I will do something magic. I will create a new channel which is called marketing. Well, now the provisioning engine does a check and says, Gökhan, that name that you have chosen is already being used, taken by another channel. So please use something else. And what I've seen that is a lot of people are using the emojis. And if you hit on Windows.comma, you will get the, or this one, Windows plus the period button. Well, you can use any emoji within the name, within the channel name. What I will do is I will create, because I will create a $sign, because I'd like to discuss around the marketing budget. You know, we have a webinar going on. I'd like to discuss what's going to be the price. We have an emailing going on. We have a speaker coming speaking. We have the badges to create. We have a system to maintain. So let's discuss around marketing. Now the error has disappeared because I have another name than the existing one. I'm adding this. Now the engine, which will provision the channel, says, okay, here we go. I'm coming to the files. And now what you will see is, if I refresh this, I'm refreshing it again, I'm refreshing it again, and again, and no folder is actually being provisioned. That's quite strange, right? What I will do is I will come here and refresh again. It's a strange behavior. You could say, my gosh, I have my marketing, I'm refreshing it. I did add a $sign. I can see that this is empty, but the folder is not being created. So what I will now do is I will just, for test, add a new document, test from marketing $sign. I will create that. Okay, and now I will just move back from that one, and now I will see my document being created. I come to my SharePoint site, and still not being created. That's strange, right? And I can now see suddenly in the same marketing folder, test from marketing $. But wait, didn't I just created that document into the marketing $sign, right? And now I'm seeing that into this. Wow, that's weird. If I come back to the marketing files, well, I now see the file both. I see test marketing from $, from marketing, and I see the same file from marketing $, which comes to a conclusion that actually the provisioning engine behind didn't take in consideration the $sign. He said, oh, I already have a folder which is called marketing, and I'm not going to create a new one. I will just use the existing one. So he just threw back the $sign and said, okay, let's use that folder. Now you have two channels listening to one folder. Let's go for another example. If I add a new channel and call this marketing and hitting on window periods and going for the heart sign, because I like to discuss, oh, that's not the heart sign. And then I like to discuss around the marketing material we have with the marketing team. If I add a new file just here, and I will just make a new one, a new document, test from marketing love. There you go. I create that document. That document is now being created. I'm coming back to marketing. You can see my file here. If I just refresh my SharePoint site, what you will see now is that I have a folder called marketing heart sign. Please, and I beg you, be careful with emojis, naming conventions that you do within Microsoft Teams, because at some scenarios, some emojis are not taking consideration. As you have seen, there are a bunch of emojis, and I didn't test each of them. I just tested a few ones, and $sign was the most common one, which was not taken in consideration. However, the heart sign is taken in consideration. It's actually ridiculous how you can mix up things when you don't respect some governance and naming conventions with Microsoft Teams. Please be careful. Another example herein is the following. Take the example that I'm adding a channel and I say like, this channel is called Gokhan's Bad Job, right? That could be a channel, like someone who loves making jokes, and you start collaborating into SharePoint and say like, this is a test convo. I'm doing a test convo. I'm even uploading some files, and I discuss with people around that job. And now it's okay. Then my manager comes to me and says like, Gokhan, come on, this is not professional. You cannot have Gokhan's bad joke within SharePoint. It doesn't feel good. So please do something around that. What you can do is you can say, okay, I'm going to edit this channel and I'm going to call it Project Alpha, which is maybe the real name of my project. And whenever you do that, well, that's okay. You can see that Gokhan has changed the channel name from Gokhan's bad job to Project Alpha. However, if you come here and do a refresh, what you will see is that Gokhan's bad job still remains the same. It didn't change. I know that Microsoft is working on top of that, and this will be resolved hopefully soon. But still today, if you want to rename a channel, well, the channel is being renamed, but in the backend SharePoint is still not being renamed. As you can see, I'm refreshing the page as much as I can, but this is not working. So what you could do is say, okay, I'm the site owner, so what I will do is I will rename this because it's SharePoint, and if something would go wrong, it would say no, you can't. But hey, wow, I can. What you would expect is if I come back to my files, oh, well, congratulations, you have broken SharePoint and the Teams integration, and now the folder, actually the unique link you had between the folder and Teams is now broken. However, if you hit on retry, Teams is intelligent enough to actually build a new folder for you where you can drag and drop again your files, but then it's still called Gokhan's bad job. And then you will see that a new folder will be created for you within the SharePoint environment. If you decide to delete that, which is possible as an owner, I will delete that, and I will delete that as well. That's something good, because the one that you had a few seconds ago, which you renamed, well, actually, you can delete them. But the other one, which is actually now Teams connected, well, you cannot delete. And one of the common practices I'm giving, and don't get me wrong, it's not a best practice, it's a common practice. Customers, whenever they create a channel, to give a unique identifier, not a name, something unique. And this could be like something like that, a naming convention, like a project from the year 2021, and the project idea, which could be like, I don't know, 25555, and then just give something else. And now I'm just guessing, right? And it could be anything, and could be like TTL, the department, I don't know, or TTL, maybe bad example, could be like HR. And now when you add that one as a channel, well, from here you can actually edit this channel and say, okay, this is the HR material, right? And then save it. And no matter how many times you change the channel name in the backend, it's gonna always remain the same, And you can change this to HR material, to IT material, to Gokhan's material, to the ESPC material. We don't care. At the backend, it's always this, which will never change, right? It's not something sexy, but at least you will not have that issue of people using wrong names which cannot be renamed. I know Microsoft is busy resolving this, and this is not something for years, but for weeks coming into your tenants. But until then, you can use that. Another bad thing with that is if you decide to rename your team, and if I'd like to remove the community from my team, and the O, and make it like an Office 365 team, well, from a Teams perspective, that's definitely all okay. However, from a SharePoint perspective, if I do a refresh, well, what you will see is this is not possible. If I change this and remove the community, well, you will get a file not found. So the renaming, naming conventions, emojis, all of that has an impact within the SharePoint that you use connected to your Teams. always be careful in what you do. I will now add a new channel and I will call it a private channel. I choose for the private one, I hit on next. And what you now will see is the experience is similar to the ones that we created as a standard one, but this one is asking to add people because it's a private one, it's not a standard. Not everyone from that team is supposed to have access here, and I can skip this or add people. Just one thing you know is that only people who are members from the European SharePoint, Office 365, and the Azure team can be part of that private channel. People who are actually from that team or that team, well, they cannot be part of this private channel. They have to be part of this team first to be able to access the private channel. If I come to the files, it's the same experience. It's SharePoint in the backend. If I open this in SharePoint, what you will see is what the provisioning engine in the backend did. It took the team name and then added actually the channel name, the private channel name, and created new sites. And that site, as I mentioned, is not teams connected, is not groups connected, meaning that it's a standalone site where you and only you with your members have access and now start collaborate, discuss around data, around stuff with this channel. Very easy to do, very easy to handle, but you need to know. Easily, you can delete channels. I will delete this. You can delete this. And you can delete this as well. You can actually delete everything from a team's perspective. But what people never do is read. And we have read the blah, blah, blah manual. Well, that actually happens here. It says, are you sure to delete this? Yes, but all the conversation will be deleted. However, your files are still accessible here, meaning that if you delete actually a channel, if you go to the SharePoint site, every folder you have within the SharePoint site is actually still available here. And what you can do is easily say, okay, I like to delete them, and everything which is not connected to your team should be able to delete. Now I deleted everything. If I come back to my team, oh, I have still HR material. If I come to my files, it says it's no longer existing. Oh, that's strange. Now I could delete a folder which was connected to my SharePoint, right? It's empty. If I come back and do a retry, it will create a new one if I refresh for me as well. So it is not because you're deleting a channel into Teams that your folders are being deleted directly or automatically. You have to still do a cleanup, and please be careful to not delete the one which contains data which is still consumed by the channel in Microsoft Teams. Very, 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 very important. Now we have the files experience, which is connected to SharePoint. You can also add within a tab, the apps that we have within the Microsoft Teams ecosystem. You have those from Microsoft, but you also have like a bunch of other apps that you can use and consume within Microsoft Teams. Two is actually extremely powerful for the SharePoint people, is the document library and the SharePoint. Let me show you the difference. Let's choose for the first one. The document library, when you hit on that, what it will ask you, and I don't really like this view, I have to be honest, because having those lists doesn't mean anything for me, because at the end, if you have like 35 sites, 45 teams, and a bunch of other stuff, well, for you, just showing like the 4 with no icon, no preview doesn't mean anything. But hey, you can choose any of them, and you can show data coming from any other site, or you can even use a link, right? And say like, okay, I'd like to see the data from that one. So let's go back here to the home, create a document library, and we will use that document library a lot. So doclib Teams ESPC. I will create that. And now what I will do is I will upload a bunch of files into that one. I will just upload one to not consume that much of the data. So I have a file into my document library. I will just copy that link, come to my SharePoint, come to my Teams, hit that one, select the site, select the doclib, and then what you will now have is give it a name, doclib ESPC, and then save it. Now I have a quite similar experience as I had in the files, but with less options. Like now, actually, they do the same, right? This one is saving files into the shared document library within a folder. This one reads from a document library. Basically, they do the same, but the view is quite different. In the file section, you have a bunch of options, but with the doclib, well, you can only add new, upload, get the link, and open in SharePoint. And honestly, the view here is not that sexy as it is within the file section. It does the same functionalities, but it's like same but different, right? That's what it does. You just can have a view to the document library. If I add the SharePoint app, well, this one has a way better view. I can choose to import document libraries, pages, lists from that specific site, or I can go to any other site and hit the link and say, I'd like to get data from that specific team or from that specific team or from that specific page, or I can just remain inside and say, okay, I like to see all the pages. I like to see all the lists. I like to see all the document libraries. If I hit that document library, which we just created a few seconds ago, now you will see a third view, which is same, but different again, right? It does the same. It reads from a document library. Now the button has a blue background, which this one did not have, which has a few more options like add a shortcut to OneDrive or export to Excel. And again, you can only read from that document library. What I actually try to explain you is you have multiple ways of showing the data from the files experience from the two apps you have, but they all have different, I'm not going to call options, but different ways of showing data with different options, which can be quite confusing for the end user. A power user, a SharePoint admin, or a Teams admin can definitely understand and see what this is. But for end user, there is no way that we can explain them that there is three ways on showcasing one data and all of them are different. So this is actually, from a design perspective, not really well done for Microsoft. And I really hope there is no one from Microsoft in this session. Otherwise, I will get an angry email. Let's hope not. Okay, if I open the SharePoint app again, I showed you we can add document libraries. We can also add pages, and pages is actually for me the one which is the most interesting one from a HR and communication perspective. If I add the home page or the news page herein, well, within my team, within my channel, I can actually see the news being published for me. So if I go to the site herein and I add a new news, let me make a new post. Well, what did I add? Just a new news, yeah. If I open this, there we go. I will add a new post. I will add a new news, and I will say within the new, from a marketing communication perspective, you know, I could be working on Microsoft Teams. I'm the HR manager, and I like to announce something very nice. I like to say, Goken is, and I can't type anymore, is the new CEO. And I can bring some images, some text, blah, blah, blah. We don't care about that, but that's a big news, right? If I post this news, everyone which is part of that site will be see that news. And if I come to my Microsoft Teams environment where I add my news as an app here, now you will be actually seeing that news is appearing into Microsoft Teams, meaning that every post you make in SharePoint is now mobile friendly, because with your mobile app, you can just go on Teams and read that post, that news just for you. If you hit on that one, you will see that there will be an embed of that SharePoint page within Microsoft Teams. And now you're actually able to even edit that news from Microsoft Teams environment. You don't even have to go anymore to SharePoint to edit that news. From Microsoft Teams, I can say, hey, Gökhan Uzifsi is way better than only Gökhan. And then I can update that news. And if I come back to my SharePoint and do a refresh from a SharePoint perspective, you will see that this has been renamed as well. This is phenomenal. This is fantastic because this is actually letting you win some time, some energy, some money. You don't have to go to your SharePoint, find the page, edit the page, publish the page. Now from one tab, you can see the content, edit the content, and save the content. So it's actually available for everyone. And that's something priceless for me, especially from an HR and marketing perspective. If we go back to the SharePoint app, then you have a final stuff, that's the list. Well, one thing I have to say, which I really don't like with that, is that there is no way you create a list, a document library or a page from that screen. I would really love when we will be able to, have a button just here says, oh, you don't have a list? Well, you can create one here, and then that page will bring you to the list creation experience. Today, it only shows you the existing ones, but no worries, we will come back here, go to the home site, and then create a new list. The new list experience, which we call Microsoft List, is actually something coming from SharePoint. People who have been using SharePoint for a decade knows that a SharePoint list has been rebranded by Microsoft team and now called Microsoft List. And now you have a bunch of options, templates, issue tracker, employee onboarding, and so on and so on. Or you can create your own blank list. To make stuff fancier, let's create one with just travel request, which I really love. It shows you how it will look like. I will use this template. You can give it a name, a description, and then you can create that one as well. Now, what you will see, I have a list predefined with some metadata, with some actually color, because if I add a new one, what you will see here is I can add a trip to Boston, SharePoint, best event in Boston, and I can search for a name, Gökhan, give a destination, Boston, and so on and so on. I can just, play around, and what you will see is that now I have a bunch of custom layouts. As here, you can see if it's approved, I can see the location, and so on and so on. If I just come back to my SharePoint, my Teams, not my SharePoint, I will add a SharePoint app again and go to lists. And it still says there is no list. Maybe I need to do a refresh. It's going to be way better. There we go. HR. I'm going to add a new one, going to the SharePoint, going to the lists, and still no lists. Oh my gosh, my apologies. I did it from the private channel and not from the SharePoint. Okay, that's my bad. So let's do some stuff here. You can't add, okay, from any SharePoint list. There we go. And now I just copied that from the private channel and now added that list here in as well. And now from here as well, I can add a new item in that list from Microsoft Teams. Very easy, very wonderful to do. One thing that I really like to show you is the Power Apps custom form. Okay, what we will now do is we will, not this one, that one. Okay, we will go to the site settings or just, use the doclib just here. What we know with SharePoint and Microsoft Teams is that we can customize our SharePoint lists and document libraries with Power Apps. You can actually build some intelligent, automated apps within SharePoint and consume artifacts from Power Apps to have some automation, some intelligence within Microsoft SharePoint. I have a specific workshop session around that subject. I'm not going to deep dive on how things are working, but basically you have your form and you can come to the insert pane and you can add a bunch of options such a button. Okay, just here. You can even add here a new screen here, and then you can easily come here and select your button and say, hey, okay, what I like to do is, oops, on the action side, I'd like you to navigate to screen 1. And you can even choose a transition mode, right? I can rename this to go screen 2. I can come here, screen 1. I can add a button just here, a big one, and then I can also go to action and say I'd like you to navigate to form screen 1, which is the first screen. Did it do? Yes, it's going with transition mode. And then I can just say here, go to button to screen 1. Okay, so that could be an app within SharePoint. I can just, hit on play and, oh, it doesn't work. If I go to navigate, go to screen 1. There we go. Okay, now I'm on screen 2. If I hit back, I'm coming back. I'm just playing around with Power Apps and build some applications, and then you can even add some input. And the one that I really love is a slider one. You can add a slider, play around with the slider, there we go, and then build your app. Very easy. Then you save that app within your SharePoint, and then you publish this. And by making it visible to the end users, everyone will see it. I will publish this. If I come to my document library, if I refresh, just to be sure that the format will working, if I hit on that one and go on more and properties, now you will see a blue screen, and that blue screen means that it is using the Power Apps artifacts. And now you can see the title that we had, you see my slider, and then I can play around within SharePoint. Phenomenal. And that's how the businesses, the end users, the power users love working with SharePoint, because now with the data, they can play around with that data with all those objects. Phenomenal. But if I come to the doclib, which I have the item, right? Well, good luck on getting that Power Apps form just here. It's not possible. If you go to the second screen where we had the other one, well, if I come here, well, the more and then see properties option is not available. Even if you add a new one or upload a new one, and let me go to choose anything here, Teams Rockstar, to upload here, I'm uploading a new, and then the form is not visible within Microsoft Teams. I can do anything I want. The option doesn't come as a property just here. I just see the classic stuff as I should be seeing, but I'm not seeing the form being consumed and created within Power Apps, which is annoying, but extremely annoying, because I know a lot of people are actually building, giving some time and energy to their app for building this stuff, and not being visible into Microsoft Teams is actually a straight negative point for them as well. Okay, not really SharePoint specific, but this is something I really have to show you as well, because this will save you a lot of time, is the delayed delivery. What you need to know that every tab you have, or every channel you have here, well, they have an email address. And that email address is actually only created when you hit on email address. Now what you will see is it did create for me an email address, and I can hit on the advanced settings within Microsoft Teams. I can apply some governance around that email address. Anyone can send an email to this address, or only members of this team, or only emails from those domains. And then you can specify who can get that, right? I will say, I like anyone who can do that, send an email to me. Phenomenal. I will do that. I will copy the email address here in. Why do I do that? A lot of time I get the question like, Gökhan, we from the SharePoint team, we have a big announcement. We are from the HR team. We have a new CEO. We'd like to show this to the teams, but we'd like to do it like only at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. But there is no one working at 6 p.m. anymore. How can we do that? So basically what you can do is you can copy the email address within Outlook, and then build your new CEO email, and then say, hey, this is an update, blah, 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 within Outlook, and then write all the text you need. And I'm just doing the stupid monkey, and my apologies here for, just to show you. And I will just mention ESPC. There we go. And then what you have here on the upper side is, and now I did forget where it was. There we go. It was on the options. I just did forget it. Under the options, you have what we call delayed delivery. And then if you change the hour to 11:44, when is 44? It's in a couple of seconds, or let's do 45. It's gonna be way better. 11:45, and then you can even make this as high importance. And then you will see that this message will be sent at 11:45 to that specific team with the specific options you have here. So I will do that, 11:45, close, and then hit on send. If I come back to my teams, we will see, hopefully within a minute, that the text will not appear here before 11:45. And now let's hope that we don't have to wait a long time, because I will be speechless in 30 seconds if we don't get that specific message from Outlook. Just waiting a couple of seconds. And while we're waiting, I will then start my PowerShell to show you about, oh, I still need to show you the bot before going to PowerShell. So just wait a couple of seconds more. Please, demo goats, be with me, that at 45, we will get that text sent by Outlook within Microsoft Teams. And that's gonna be a business saver, because now, normally at 45, I said normally, please, the message should come within Microsoft Teams under the HR channel. And still not. So just going to do a refresh. Still not. Oh my gosh. Oh, first demo failing today. That's not good. Okay, no worries. Oh, there we go. Finally, it came in. Okay, fantastic. So what you can see is that my mail came in with the important tag sent to that specific channel, and then you can see the text that we have been written a few seconds ago. And that, again, as I mentioned, is a real deal saver, because now you can schedule posts from a SharePoint site, from anything else you have, and then send that post, send anything else from Outlook to that specific Teams channel. That's a real deal saver. Two examples left, and herefore I need to come here, is we all know that we have been using SharePoint within Microsoft Teams as a frequent asked questions. A lot of people have been building FAQs on SharePoint lists, and whenever they had a question, they said, hey, look to that SharePoint list because all the questions you have are there, which basically no one did really care or use, right? And that's the reason why I just had a look on the internet to see what would be a cool way to replace those classic legacy, never been used knowledge FAQs. And there is a cognitive service under Azure which is called QAMake.ai. And with that, actually, you can build your bot within Azure, publish it through Microsoft Teams, and then replace those SharePoint legacy FAQs. Basically, whenever you build actually your Q&A, you can add a bunch of questions, manual questions. Herein, like you can say, add a Q&A pair and say, how is the ESPC webinar going? That could be a question. I can even add an alternative phrasing, or I can directly jump to a response. Excellent. Looking forward to the next session. That could be an answer, right? So whenever you're done with all of that, by the Q&As that you had within your SharePoint, well, you can save and train your bot within Azure, and then he will remember all the questions you had and all the responses you have. Now, what you need to do is you can just easily come and publish that one. And that whenever you publish your Q&A, that endpoint will be making available for the bots you have within Azure. And therefore, let me connect to my Azure. Well, you will see if I come to the portal and go to my resource group, oh, it's this screen, I guess, the second one, not the first one. If I go to the Azure portal under the resource group, well, you will see that I have a bunch. Oh, why is it on this one? It should be on this one. I will have a resource group, there we go, with a bunch of application service or the Q&A maker app, and I have my bot. And that bot is now listening to the Q&A maker, and that bot is actually now connected to my Microsoft Teams. I could explain hours around how you build that, but it's extremely easy. You can connect your bot, which is listening to your Q&A, and connect them to Microsoft Teams. Whenever you are connected to Microsoft Teams, you just have to come to Teams, and then within the App Studio, well, you can build a new app which is listening to that bot. Herein, you can see that I have my bot, which has that idea. One thing as a takeaway is from the resource group, you cannot find the bot ID. You have to go under Azure Active Directory, go to the app registration, and from here on, you can find the application ID of your bot. I needed like a half day to find out where the ID was, and I could finally find it under the app registration within the Azure Active Directory portal, just as a takeaway. So whenever you build the app, you just have to fill in a bunch of details, your bot, connect your bot, and then you need to test and distribute. When you hit on install, well, don't hit on add. Please choose a team, a chat, or a meeting, and then I will publish this to the general Q&A maker and then set the bot, which I did before. So now if I come to my Q&A maker, now I could easily say, okay, those SharePoint FAQs, they're deprecated. We don't use them anymore. We will use a bot. And now what you can do is you can talk to your bot. I'll start a new conversation and say, hey, choose for my bot, which is then the Q&A, Neoxy bot. And what was the question I did? I can't remember anymore. My knowledge bases. Oh my gosh, again. Why is it always switching from tenants? I don't get it. I will connect again. My apologies. I have some weird issues where it just connects to another tenant for any reason. I still don't yet know why. But now I will see my Q&A maker. And I did ask a question, okay, how is the ESPC webinar going? So I'm going back to my Teams and saying, hey, Neoxybot, how is the ESPC going? And now the bot is actually going to intercept the question, even if it has errors, and it should be able to respond to me. Now it says, oh, I didn't find anything. So let's go back and copy this one. There we go. And now say, hey, Neoxybot. And now I'm asking the same question, and now it says, excellent, looking forward to the next session. As you can see, having issues, typos is not that well. Whenever you are typing exactly the same thing, it says, excellent, look for the other question. AI, the Q&A maker AI is intelligent enough to learn from mistakes you have been doing and how much you train, how better it is. But one thing I really love to show you, and I know we are short on time, is the following. That's the last thing I will show today. If you go under the settings, well, you can add a chit chat where it's actually predefined and pre-built questions, answers for you. You can import knowledge bases, but you can also import some PDF, Excel, Word files. And this one is a PDF file which comes from a website which has a lot of information about the Surface Pro. What I will do is I will add that one just here. I will add URL. Now, if I save and train, now Q&A Maker will actually read that PDF file, will intercept all the data we have coming from that PDF file, and it will build questions from that PDF file. And now what you will see, if I type user guide, I will then get an answer, and I will even get adaptive cards where I can select for a specific item, and it will go deep dive into my questions. And you can see I have a lot of questions coming from that PDF. If you change your PDF, well, no worries. You can always go to the settings and hit on refresh content, and that content can be modified. One bad thing, and please, Microsoft, if you are listening, please, I beg you, make this URL listening to SharePoint files. Because today, when you build a Q&A maker, it listens to almost everything except for SharePoint files, which is a no-go in many scenarios. Please, 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 this is something in the roadmap since 2019. Please make this available for SharePoint sites as well. What I will now do is I will publish this, all the questions, to the bot. And now, if I come back to my knowledge base and get the question that we had, there we go. Here in the user guide, I come back to my team and say, hey, Neoxybot, user guide. And now we are getting rid of those legacy SharePoint FAQs. And now I have a bot which gives all the data from here with adaptive cards. I can choose for any other item that comes from here. I can go for versioning number, and now it types version number for me. And now the bot is responding with the version number just for me. As you can see, a lot of options with SharePoint, with replacing SharePoint one, with a lot of things that works with SharePoint, a lot of things that need some attention, like the naming convention, like Power Apps, like the SharePoint URLs not working within Q&A Maker, a bunch of stuff. I really hope that you have enjoyed this session as much as I did presenting it, because I could talk for hours, literally hours, about SharePoint and Microsoft Teams and how you can get the best of both of them to have a perfect scenario where you can actually lead the digital transformation, get rid of all the applications, environments, and go to the modern era. That being said, we have only 5 minutes, so if we have questions, I'd be glad to take all of them and see if I can respond to those questions. Ella?
We have someone in already, yeah. So we have someone said, what about permission to add the list from a private channel to the team? Some members of the team will not be able to see the list, and then in brackets, they're from private channel.
Yes, so that's going to be the case. And that's the reason why I apologized during the demo. I did create the list in the wrong location. I should have created that into the shared SharePoint site and not into the private channel. So that's a correct statement. If you create in a private channel, that's going to be a big issue for people who have not access to that list.
Perfect. Does Microsoft Teams use end-to-end encryption, and can it be managed/changed?
From a SharePoint perspective, I would say yes. I have no clue idea for voice and messaging and all of kind of that, but it would be surprisingly bad sign for me if that wouldn't be the case, but to be checked.
Perfect. Someone said, I'm not able to see add to SharePoint on my Microsoft Store. Why is that?
Well, that means that the tenant admin or the Teams admin has blocked the applications from an IT perspective. I know that a lot of people in organizations, especially the IT department, is blocking a bunch of apps, a bunch of experiences to avoid that dramatically growth of usage and data. Because when you have the access, why wouldn't you create it? Like, you can do it, right? And that's the reason why the IT people sometimes block accesses to artifacts. So I would recommend you checking with the local IT and see if you have the rights to add those apps and services within Teams.
Perfect. When adding third-party apps in a team, will information from the team be made available to the app provider?
Well, I hope no. That's the thing. Whenever you submit an app as a vendor to the store, the whole process, I don't know the process, how Microsoft is checking stuff, but I know that they do a lot of series of tests and benchmarks and see if there's any data leak and see if there's a virus or you know, any writ back to the other app. I would say no, but maybe in some scenarios, and take the example of Trello or Altasian or Monday.com. Well, in some scenarios, they have to read some of those values from your teams, like the team name or the team owner. But that is then clearly mentioned in the app. Whenever you authorize the app using Microsoft Teams, it says to you like, hey, I need access to do this, 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 and this. You can see what the app is doing. For me, in some scenarios, reading some information is not that problematic. It becomes problematic when they read and you don't know it. So always check and refer what the app is doing before installing it and using it like blindly.
Perfect. Can we create teams that are not connected to 365 groups?
Can we create a team that is not? The question would be, why would you do that? Because there is no way that today you can create a team without a group, because the group at the end is the security model where you will manage the permissions, where your SharePoint site will be connected to, etc., etc. So I don't see any logic or any business scenario behind that, but I'm really interested. So if the person who asked that question could write me back on my Twitter handle, just explaining what the case is, I'll be glad to listen and see what the purpose of this is, because I've never seen this before, people wanting to create a team without a group.
Perfect. He said he will tweet you. And then someone asked, can I create a group form and shield the results from the team?
Can I create a group and a group form? What is a group form? A group form.
He said in forms. Can I create a group form in forms that she can shield the results from the team? Sorry, so that the team is the owner.
I don't get the question, to be honest. The team's form shield. I'm sorry. I don't get the question.
They might write back in a minute. And then there was another person who said, I have to scroll up here now. Sorry. Do you have any opinion on folders versus document sets versus metadata to organize files in libraries?
Oh my God, thank you so much for the question. That made my day. That's the most simple question you can ask within all the experts, and they will all have different opinions. Microsoft has been always saying like, use metadata, avoid folders. Now that we are going to a float architecture, it's not anymore metadata, it's all about folders. There is no good or bad within both scenarios. I think use metadata whenever you can use whenever you can use folders. It was a shame, like whenever we used SharePoint on premises, to say I'm using folders and not metadata. Today it's not the case anymore. So it's good to be using both, because Microsoft is using both, right? They use folders more and more, as I can see now. Even when you upload a file in a chat, it creates a folder in your OneDrive. You upload a video stream, it makes a folder for you. Whiteboard, it makes a folder for you. So yeah, it was Evel folders, but now it's more about use whenever you can use it. So that's my opinion. It's not bad. It's something that you have to use folders.
Okay, perfect. Well, that wraps it up now, because we're actually nearly gone over time. So thanks very much for joining us today and spending the time with us and sharing all your expert knowledge. It was very good. Loads of questions, good, strong attendance. So thanks very much, Gaucain.
No worries. Thanks all. Merci beaucoup. Arigato. Teşekkürler in any language, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a great day. And then for everyone else, just thanks again to Netix for sponsoring the week, and join us again at 3 p.m. for Power Platform's deep integration with SharePoint. Thank you all. Have a great day.